Hi, everyone. I'm wearing my glasses full time now because literally my eyesight, since I've gotten older, like I can barely read what's in front of me. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's micro learning How to Live a Bold Life with Leigh Burgess. I'm Phan. This is not a boring presentation. We want you in the conversation. Your voice matters. So if you have a book recommendation, if you have advice to share, we want to hear from you. So in the comment or the chat, let us know. Ask questions as well. Connect with each other. For those new to Community of Seven, our micro learnings, the purpose is really to help our listeners elevate their mindset and their skill set by bringing in leading authors, coaches, executives, founders, and subject matter experts. Our goal is to democratize leadership development for all. Not many folks can afford executive training at $300, $400, $500 an hour, so we make these calls free. That's why we want these micro learnings open to the public, and this is why we have a global audience. So whether you're watching this from Kingston, Jamaica, Vietnam, Manila, or the US, we want you participating and uplifting this global community. Once again, our goal is to train over 1 million people in the next decade. So thank you for making it out to today's microlearning and joining the movement. Lastly, we want you to take 1, 2, 3 actions from this call after hanging up. We want you to implement it within the next 24 hours. So before we begin, a few questions. For those who are regulars, you know the deal. I'm going to ask you a few questions. If the answer is yes, I want you to put both hands like this. And if it's no, both hands down. Have you ever held back from pursuing a big opportunity because you were afraid of failing? Yeah. I know a lot of us, right? Got
Yeah.
us. Do you feel like you're currently living up to your full potential in either your personal or professional life? Like one hand down. I still got to work on my personal life.
2 hands up if it's yes. Is that like yes? Okay.
That's still yes, but like I said personal, professional. So professional,
Oh,
I kind of, but my personal life, I'm still working on it. Like I'm trying to get my
oh,
health.
we're all a
So
work
I'm
in
like,
progress. Yeah.
see, is there a bold decision you've been thinking about but haven't acted on yet? Maybe writing a book, maybe asking someone out. Is there a bold decision you've been thinking about but haven't acted on? Okay. Can't wait to hear them too.
Yeah.
Do you believe that stepping outside your comfort zone could lead to greater success or fulfillment? Last question. Have you ever looked back and wish you had taken a bolder approach to a challenge? Once again, just excited to be here today. And I have to tell you, the fact that you came here today and showed up shows that you made the right decision in terms of really taking that first step in terms of living a bold life. Because what we're going to dive into today could literally change your life and how you approach your life and your career. I know I had wished I had met Leigh and read her book when I was younger, right? Because I don't know if I've necessarily lived a bold life. So if you're sitting there right now, if you're feeling like you haven't lived up to your potential, maybe you've played it safe all your life or even stuck in a cycle of waiting for the right time to make your move or waiting for someone to pick you. I know that was me. I was always waiting for someone to pick me. And finally, I said, I'm going to pick myself. Then I want you to pay a close attention to today's conversation. Today is all about learning to stop playing small and start living a big, bold life. Look, I get it. We've all had moments where we shrink back, where we doubt ourselves, where we let fear, perfectionism, or other people's expectation of us hold us back. But let me tell you something. It's not the fear of failure that keeps most people stuck. It's a fear of being seen, of taking up space, of stepping into the spotlight and owning who we are. And that, my friend, is what is keeping us small. But let me ask this. This is a rhetorical question, or you can even answer it in the comment if you want. Who are you helping by playing small? Who benefits from you keeping your head down, not raising your hand, and not stepping up? No one. The answer is no one. That's right. In fact, you're doing a disservice to yourself and to everyone around you when you hold that. The big paradigm shift for me was this time, and I've told this story before. It was beginning of the pandemic, and I was sitting between my mother, who has advanced stage dementia, and my daughter. And I realized that my mother played it small all her life, not intentionally, but because we grew up poor and she worked as a hairdresser all of her life, but she sacrificed everything for the family. She never wanted vacation. She never worked. She worked 7 days a week because my father didn't work because he was disabled. And I looked at myself, I looked at my mom, I looked at my daughter, and I was like, am I living a big life? Am I chasing all of my dreams? And at that point, the answer was no. And I looked at my mom and I said, I need to I need to live a big life because she sacrificed for me and my family. And I looked at my daughter and I thought, she's looking up to me and I am her blueprint. And it was much harder for me to live a bold life for me, but it was much easier when I framed it as the fact that I had to do it for my family. So I want you to think about a time when you wanted to do something bold and big. Maybe it was applying for that dream job. Maybe it was starting a new project or asking for a promotion. And sometimes it's saying no to something that wasn't serving you. Or in some cases, leaving relationships that no longer serve you. But instead, we hesitate. Maybe you weren't ready for it. You didn't have all the answers. Or maybe you just thought the timing wasn't right. Here's the hard truth. There's never going to be a perfect time. You're never going to feel fully ready. And the only way you're going to build the life you want is by deciding right now, at this moment, that you're done playing small and you're ready to live a big life. So before I introduce Leigh, in the comment or in the chat right now, whether you're watching this from the live Zoom audience or if you're watching this on one of the live streams, I want you to answer this question in the comment or the chat. What prevents most people, or it could be what prevents you, right, from living your best life and your most bold life? What prevents most people? Don't press send till I say so. I'm going to count down, and we're going to put send at the same time. What prevents you or most people from living their best life and most bold life? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Press send. Fear of failure. Myself. Ooh, fear of failure or change. I love that. Yes. Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of fear, a lot of failure on the different LinkedIn live streams and Facebook. It's the same. And Maurice, I have to say, so brave. It's because it's ourselves. It's our choice. But the powerful thing about that when it's myself, right, is that you have the power to change that. And how freeing is that, right? So speaking about living a big life, let me bring our beautiful guest speaker today on the stage. So speaking of living a big life, today we have my incredible guest who's going to show you exactly how to do that. Leigh Burgess, who I respect tremendously. We met earlier this year, actually, but it feels like I've known you forever. She's someone who knows a thing or two about embracing boldness, and not just in theory, but in practice. So over the past 20 years, she's been a transformative force in industries like business, healthcare, and education, helping thousands of women and organizations step into their power. She's the founder of Bold Industry, which join this group if you are a woman entrepreneur who's looking for a community to lift you up. I've been to a few of their events and it's amazing. It's a consulting and coaching company that's all about helping people make bold, sustainable changes in their lives. But here's what's more exciting. Leigh has developed something called the Bold Framework, which she's going to cover today. And this framework is a game changer. It's set of 4 powerful pillars: believe, own, learn, and design, that will show you how to stop waiting for permission, stop second guessing yourself, and start designing a life that's big, bold, and unapologetically you. She's the author of Be Bold Today, which is out on November 19th. Make sure you pre-order the book on Amazon or wherever books are sold, Barnes & Noble. And once you get the book and you read it, I know you're going to love it. Make sure you also write a review, because that's how we show our authors love, right? That's how we give them a big fat hug. So once again, she's the author of Be Bold Today and the host of the Bold Lounge podcast. and a regular contributor to Forbes, Fast Company, and Entrepreneur. She's the real deal, and today she's going to give us the tools and the mindset to finally stop playing small and start living a big, bold life. Welcome, drum roll.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So excited to meet
Go
you
ahead.
today.
Yes. So I think, from the perspective of big and bold and all the things that you've talked about, appreciate that. I think I've never really looked at my life being anything other than right now full of possibilities and being able to move forward into some of the fear that everyone talked about. I think some of the things that held me back were some of my mindset pieces, a financial mindset particularly, and wanting to make sure that, I was taking care of my family and some of that, before I made my big swing of bold, I think, which was quitting my job without having a plan. I got to a place of really significant burnout and had to really choose me. And that was the first time that I think I'd done that so wholeheartedly and in a way that had such a big impact.
Can we pause you for a second? Because you were very successful. You were kind of climbing the corporate ladder.
Hmm.
Do you feel like you were living a bold life before? Because this is how I challenge people. Just because you have the title or the pay doesn't necessarily mean you're living a bold life. Do you
Oh,
feel like you were
absolutely not. Yeah, yeah. I don't think I even talked about being bold. The only thing I ever said in my career, and I was at large academic institutions, started as a project manager and worked my way into the C-suite. I was a chief at 40. And, obviously doing what you need to do to get into those particular roles and spaces. But I never thought I was bold. I thought I was just being me. And I think that's one thing that in general, people don't even realize sometimes they're bold, that they're following their gut, they're going with their intuition, they're stepping into fear, they're standing up for those that don't have a voice. Those are bold, bold moves. And I was doing those things, but I never called myself that. The only thing I said in my teams was it's a big swing of bold. And, like, we're going to try this out. We're going to learn. It's going to be an iterative process, but we're going to go for it. And so I did say that. Maybe that's my second book. But I think, from the perspective of like walking in, and now you can't get away from the word bold if you're around me pretty much. I'm a real big merch lover, lots of merch, and I'm putting it out there,
I
obviously.
got your thought. I got your thought.
Obviously, like in the middle of the book, but I think for me, the way that I viewed my life, I know now, seeing how I live, that I wasn't bold because I wasn't in alignment with who I truly am. And so
Yeah.
for me, that's part of being bold is you feel in alignment. And I think, one of the things I needed to do, which held me back, was just believe in myself more than ever and in a way that I had never really leveraged it before. And that was a big part of me quitting my job at a point where I was just so unhealthy mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all the health ways that you can be. I had to choose me. And I don't advise that to people, but for me, it was a health choice and I had to do it. And I think that belief in myself was something that was necessary. And no one can give that to you. That there's not belief in a box that gets delivered by FedEx. Like, you got to do it. You got to figure that out, which was kind of the big first step into creating the framework that I created.
Yeah, in some context, the first time I met Leigh, she invited me to speak at one of her bold events where she brings in authors, and I was like, "Let's have dinner before because I wanna get to know you better," because,
Yeah.
there's just something about her, and we ended up sitting down for, like, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then we walked around Chinatown in New York and bought
Bought gifts
Chinese
for our
for our kids.
daughters and yeah.
But what I found so interesting is that we had so many shared experience. We've come from 2 different backgrounds, 2 different industries, but, like, our shared lived experience was so similar. And one of the things that I think was most powerful is that on the outside, it looked like we were living a bold life when we were executives and we had the corner office and the EAs and all that other stuff, but we weren't happy. We were miserable. And at least I will speak for myself, I felt like I was failing as a mother, like my health was in decline as well. And one of the things I always tell people is sometimes living big and living an authentic life is sometimes living a big life is living a simple life, right? So part of living a simple life is letting go. Part of being bold, in my opinion, is letting go of what other people think and what society's definition of success looks like. Because I think I was living the life that my parents wanted for me, or that, okay, this is what success looks like. You climb the corporate ladder and you get the title and you get the money, and that's what success is. And for
Mhm.
me, success was living a life where I could work and do work that I love, but also be present for my daughter, to nurture myself and my passions. So living a big, bold life wasn't necessarily glitz and glamour and title and power. It was living the life that was authentic to me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I don't
Yeah.
know, like, about your bold framework and, it's a cornerstone of your work. Can you walk us through each of the
Sure.
pillars and yeah, or you don't
Yeah.
have to share all of them because we probably want to save some of them for when we buy your book. But can you share
I'll
like
give you a teaser, yeah, so you know what it's about and kinda just even how you walk through it. But just to kinda give my, like, side of what you just shared, I think for me, it's about being in alignment, right? You felt out of alignment with your corporate role versus your role as a parent, your role as a wife, your role as a daughter, we have so many things that we are, and I think that's one of the things that I wanted to feel after I had left this job, which I've learned so much from, but I wanted to feel like the whole 360 degree of me. I didn't want to just have to be corporately or be acknowledged just because I'm a mom or be acknowledged because, I'm caring for my parents or whatever it may be. Like we have so many roles, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to create community so that women could step into being real and feeling okay to be real around our community and within it. And I think it's important just to realize that if you're not feeling like you can be that there are steps you can start taking towards that. I think, we've seen some comments in the chat, at least in Zoom around, there are financial factors to making bold moves and thinking about your decisions. And I think when you think about what success looks like to you now, it might be different than it was when you were 40. Even your definition of being bold may change and evolve, and it's a personal definition. So, what's bold to me may not be bold to you. But I created the framework for me because I didn't know what was next. I had made this really big decision, and I had a little bit of savings and a little bit of a retirement that we could use for me to figure out my next steps, whether it's going back into corporate or starting my own thing. What was so interesting is when I gave my resignation, I really felt pulled to do my own thing. And I started the process of incorporating and doing those things. But at the same time, I also knew that I needed to work on my mindset. I needed to work on my health and wellness and then be strategic. I think strategy, wellness, and mindset connected was one of the things that was important for me to actually move into my next self, my next level, the becoming of me, so to speak. And I think one of the things about, there's 5 myths that I talk about in the book. One of those myths is that it's too late to be bold. I'm too old. I already, I was 48 when I was making this decision. And I had, gone to school, lots of degrees, achieved, success is defined by being in a particular role, named a certain thing and pay and all those things that, certainly are helpful, but I didn't feel successful. I didn't feel aligned. And obviously I was misaligned because I was in significant burnout. But the Believe, Own, Learn, Design framework was really one, I created it because I'm all about acronyms. It's actually how I learn. That's how I learned in middle school and high school and how I memorized things. It was just the way that I would go about remembering what I was talking about and needed to learn. And so I think, belief was one of the first ones that I knew I needed to dig into because I don't know if I held back on making certain decisions in my life because I didn't have enough belief in myself. I also had a lot of negative self-talk and some shadows to uncover that, I did in a process of some things I did on my own and some things I did with my coach. I did get a coach because I think at different points in your life, you might need support or therapy or coaching to help you kind of go and understand yourself a little bit better. So definitely working with a coach at that point to uncover some of those things, but I didn't do it immediately. Honestly, after I left, I resigned. My last day was a Friday at a month, before I left. And I just took a breath. I needed to like get outside, get some vitamin D. I hadn't been really, with my family and those types of things. So I had to actually get healthy first. And so that was starting to move and to eat better and to spend time with people who energized me. And then I really started working on the framework, which, the first one was belief. The second one was ownership. And for me, ownership is I think I was always owning the things that didn't work versus owning the things that did. And so I really wanted a way to uncover and be able to see the things that were going well and to celebrate those small wins as much as big wins. Like I think one of the myths of being bold is that it's always big and loud, and it isn't. It is very, very quiet in certain spaces, and it's a continuum. So from the perspective of a quiet, bold moment really could happen just between your ears of you talking kinder to yourself. You realizing that, wow, even though that wasn't a big deal, like you've actually accomplished, you thought it wasn't a big deal, but you've accomplished something that someone hasn't, you know? Maybe your bold move is just to walk around the block, today because you're not getting outside enough because your head's down in your work or you're, doing some things. Or maybe it's something that you think is insignificant in some way, but you're not recognizing it. It's actually that step towards you, the next thing that you want to do. And so I think remembering that bold is a continuum and it's yours and it's yours to define and no one else defines that for you. So I think I have let the world define a lot of things for me. And I think that's where ownership came in. Learning, which is just, I am a context junkie. Let me learn, let me soak everything up as much as possible type of person. But I think everyone can get stuck in some spaces and have a fixed mindset about something. I can't do it because, and then a what if list that's, 100 things long. I think of people just trying to like figure out their next move and being very thoughtful, which is another myth about being bold, is that it's not thoughtful. It's looking without leaping. It's actually one of the most pragmatic things that you do because you normally don't just like put on a cape and take a leap. You're really thinking this, then that. How do I do it? I think when we were thinking about what we were going to do next, and I, was trying to figure out what to do and I couldn't fix it at work. I just couldn't. Everything I'd done before wasn't working. Work harder, take more responsibility, take more of the lead. I was doing all of these things and it was actually just getting worse and worse and worse. So I think that was like a fixed place for me that I got unstuck. But using that learning place as a really like, what have I done that has been a success? And then where have I also had a setback that I should have learned from or can learn from or have learned from? So learning from successes and setbacks. And then going into design was really all about designing your best life, you having agency in that, you being the one that can do that. Like, we've all heard no one's coming to save you, and it's true. So I think people really understanding that they hold the pen to really the next chapter, the next line of their life. And that's all they have to do is write the next line, the next sentence, the next paragraph, not the whole book. And so the what's next is actually what you have to work on. So in designing and then understanding that we're designed a specific way. I, understand and, learned about my own human design when I was doing coaching. And then the other part of that I bring into kind of the conversations that I have is just one of the things that at 48, I was like, I could be anything I wanted to be. And one of the things I thought I wanted to be or could make a living at was being an interior designer. And I love to design and do all the things and make things just feel like earthy luxury. And what I realized is I couldn't do that as a job. But I like the ideas and the principles around design, which is harmony, balance, white space, really thinking about our lives in those ways. How much white space do you have right now on your wall, in the sense of all the things you're working on?
But you know what's interesting is when I go to your events, I see the design aspect in everything.
Yeah, I think I pulled it in there. Yeah, definitely.
Think of book cover to your little curated gifts and like everything is just so perfect and beautiful. And I see that design aspect in what you do. But
Yeah.
I want to read some comments, because I think you make some really great points. Ann C says, I love not letting your age get in the way. I know many women in their 80s, 90s who are techie, hip, and always learning. And I know it just, like I used to do that. Oh, I'm too old to change, or I can't do this, and I've just been like, I'm just gonna try something new, AI, all of these things, and I've just been jumping head first, and it's been such a learning experience, right? And growing experience, especially as an entrepreneur. Because I think in the past I would try to outsource it, but I was like, no,
Mhm.
I want to figure it out myself right now. And I
Right.
want to go back to one of the things you said in the beginning, which is, you have to be intentional with what you want in life. And I think it's important to pause, to breathe. Because I think a lot of times people aren't intentional with the life they want to live. And so I know for me, I did that for decades where I was just like, okay, I'm climbing the corporate ladder. I became a director. Now I have to become a VP. Now that I'm a VP, I have to become an SVP. Next role, C-suite. I never stopped and asked myself, am I happy doing what I'm doing? And what do I want from my life? It was just kind of the natural progression of, because you're kind of going on this, it's almost like you're kind of mindlessly moving forward, and it's like the bread, like in all the science experience where you leave a bread from for,
Mhm.
and I was like following the breadcrumb, right? And I also think about how your priorities can change and shift as we get older, right? And the average person lives 77 years, so that breaks down to 19.25 per year. So I've been breaking my life into 4 quarters. The first quarter, you're really learning how to walk and talk and be a human, right? That's kids to college. And then the second quarter is really about finding your career, climbing the corporate ladder. And now I'm in my third quarter. And I realize my third quarter is really about finding meaning. And if you're in your third quarter, but you're still going by the rules of your second quarter, which is to hustle hard, climb up that corporate ladder, there's going to be a disconnect. And I think that's what happened with me. And I don't know if that's what happened with you as well. But it's this kind of this disconnect where why am I not happy even though I have these things? And you realize these things don't really make you happy per se. And if you keep on going without stopping and just saying, do I enjoy what I'm doing? Do I enjoy who I'm working with? Do I enjoy, do I see myself doing this 5, 10 years from now? And if you don't look up, put your head, from this kind of like being a mindless robot, you're going to be in the same place 5, 10, 15 years from now. So that the power of that pause and that intentionality, I think is really key. Maurice also says, I admire, this is to Leigh, I admire that you did not allow your fears and worries to hinder you from what you wanted in your life and that you found the courage to create your journey despite how you felt. I want to actually kind of bring up another thing that was kind of brought up in the chat as well. So Anne says the financial part of taking a leap is a consideration for most, but if you don't have the money now, the bold move is to save and plan. So, I mean, you just quit, and it's so funny that you bring up that example because I did the same thing. I had a job, a toxic work culture, and I just quit without anything lined up. But how do you do that if you don't have savings or maybe a spouse or someone that can kind of pick up the slack if you're not working? Like, what would you kind of recommend to the folks who, might not have a cushion? Because the average American has like what, $600, $700 in savings, right?
Yeah.
How do you jump? How do you take the bold leap when you might not be able to financially?
Yeah. So again, I was the financial, and I hate this term, breadwinner of the family. So I was the one bringing in the salary to the family. So big responsibility to do something like that and to not have a plan. Obviously, we did talk about it. We had small savings, and I had some retirement that I knew I could use if I needed to. Had a very small runway too. So I had 5 months once I kind of went through my healing and coaching journey and created my product suite of what I would do. A lot of that was fueled by belief. But there are things you can do just along the way where you don't have to quit your job. I think for me, again, it went to a health perspective where I think the next thing for me was having a stroke, and I just didn't want to have a stroke. So I think for me, it was important that just if you are feeling this misalignment, or if you're feeling like there's something's got to give, something needs to change, or I'm curious about, like you need to start taking the first step towards it, which sometimes can be challenging, that first step. But maybe you're curious about doing something in marketing, but you're in finance. Maybe starting to talk to some of the people in the marketing field, or start to follow or join a community, that you can join, maybe even for free, that is all filled with those types of people who you feel you are drawn to. Or maybe it's learning a new skill. Those are bold moves that take you a step towards what you may want to do next. What you'll do in that is you'll learn. You'll meet people. You'll have an experience. You'll be able to participate in something that you wouldn't have. Instead of just writing it off saying like, this is a really good job and I have a title and I have insurance and I have a 401k. Those are all really good things. But I think if anything we've learned over the last 2 years is just being in a corporate setting doesn't mean stability. I have many, many friends who have been in a corporate role, felt like it was a stable role, and lost their job based on rifts and things that have happened just with the economy. So I think, sometimes what we think is stable isn't. And I think I grew up that way. My parents were very much like, this is what you do, this is where you go. Certainly with the idea of like getting to the next level and, continuing to be promoted and those types of things. I think I didn't even think I was out of alignment. I wasn't really paying attention intentionally. So I didn't really think about it other than this is my career, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm providing. So I think the advice I would have for anyone that's feeling that something's got to give, change, or I want to get curious about is what could you do next? Is maybe it's just, sitting down for a couple minutes and writing all the things you find joy in. Maybe you find joy in taking photographs. Maybe you find joy in painting. Maybe you find joy in, speaking publicly and kind of, giving to and being in service to others in the community. Do some more of that. And then to find out kind of like, why is this something that I enjoy? What is it, how is it aligned with my values? And I think that's where I was out of alignment, was with my values. My values are my family. My values are serving others. My values are really being able to help others see possibilities and, be honest and straightforward. And I was definitely out of alignment with several of those. And so I think that's really, that was one thing that I think was just doing that values check too, which I think you can start with that process and then kind of work on doing some things in areas that align more with what brings you joy.
And I think you also give yourself permission to test and learn, which I think you're kind of talking about too, like
Yeah,
how you try
totally.
into design and you realized, hey, that's not the right fit, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think we as adults allow ourselves to test and learn. I mean, I think about my daughter when she was 5. One week she wanted to be a doctor. The next week she wanted to be a ventriloquist. And then the week after she wanted to be like a singer, right?
Yeah.
And she just allowed herself this creativity to try different things and say, okay, I like it. And I think as adults, we're like, okay, you're going to be a lawyer. You have to be a lawyer. And that's all you can do. Right.
Mhm.
And I know for me, the process that I had after I got laid off from Fortune magazine and had to start my own business was I wasn't sure what I was building. And at first, I started masterminds with CEOs and founders. And I realized that even though I enjoyed doing it, it didn't get like, it wasn't that passion. And what I realized is that I went back to what I originally did 20 years ago, where I got my master's in, which was teaching. So I do
Mhm.
corporate training and development all around the world. And then when the book came out, I was terrified of public speaking in big stages and whatnot, but I had to promote my book. So I had to get on stage and speak. I spoke at one of your events, right? And that was someone who suffered from social anxiety and fear, like of public speaking. That became my profession, and now I love it. But originally, if you had told me 10, 15 years ago, you are going to be a professional speaker, I would have been, you're out of your mind, right? But you have to
Yeah.
kind of test and learn sometimes. And the other thing I always tell people too is the whole notion of ikigai, right? The Japanese terms of finding your meaning.
Mhm.
And ikigai is that intersection of 4 different quadrants. It's what you love doing, what you're good at, and this is the important part, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. And you need to kind of have that intersection because you really enjoyed interior design, but if you couldn't get paid for it because of the location you're in or because you didn't have that Rolodex, right? Then you're not going to get paid for it. And so it might not be the right career choice for you, but it might be the right career choice for someone who might have a lot of friends who are in real estate, right? For everyone, it's going to be an individual answer. And I think that's what's powerful about your process of how you kind of found and discovered your meaning. So in your book, you also talk about the importance of believing in yourself, really about betting on yourself, right? That's one of the first steps in transformation. How can someone, someone who's watching this right now, either a live stream or in the Zoom audience, how can they cultivate that belief in themselves when faced with self-doubt or imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So definitely in the book, I walk through several activities. If you pre-order the book, you get some extras with that. And I think, some things that you'll be able to use in addition to the book itself has a QR code for a workbook to go through the book. When it comes to imposter syndrome, and I just spoke about this last week in an interview, I think one of the things that happens is that there's these narratives we tell ourselves. There's social expectations of us that we may have going on. We may have beliefs that were ascribed to us by our parents or our culture or who we're around or who, people that influence us, like our parents or friends or relatives. And we don't potentially want to subscribe to them now. And I think that it's interesting, just as you think about your own beliefs of just doing, you could do a mini belief audit. And, there's a more in-depth one in the book. But one of the things that you could do with a belief audit is really go through, like just on a piece of paper, write down, I believe. I believe that I'm strong. I believe that I am capable. I believe that, I am able to figure this out. I believe I will make my next move. maybe they're not as positive. Like when I first did this, they were not, I believe I don't have a plan. Like all these things that, were coming into my mind, I just kind of let my pen go and then draw a second line on the other side. So you're kind of splitting your paper in two. And then is this actually true? You know, I am capable. I am able to create a plan. I can take the first step. And so just doing that belief audit right now, and what you'll most likely see is some trends that you need to either align with really how the world is and start to understand kind of where is that coming up for me. So my imposter syndrome actually came out not in the corporate world. I never felt it in there. And I knew what it was and I knew other people had it, but I don't think I ever felt it there. I feel it more in an entrepreneur world. I mean, example, I went to a mastermind last week. I'm in the room with 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs, and we're all talking about going to the next level. And I felt like the odd one out. Like I just, I'm introverted. Which means I don't power up in big groups, and I like smaller groups. And it's just not something that I enjoy. It doesn't mean I have a handicap, which I think some people think introversion means like you can't speak on the stage or you can't talk to people or you hide in a corner. It's not that at all. It's just about where you get your energy from. So like going into that group, like I felt a bit of imposter syndrome. But what was interesting is they had us write for 20 minutes. And I was like, I can't write for 20 minutes. I don't journal. Like it's just something I want to do, but I haven't. And literally, I just started writing again, doing a belief audit. And what was so interesting, and I actually shared it with my family when I got back, of like where I started and where I ended. So it's like if you even just like give yourself some moments just to write down kind of just the things that you're thinking right now around your beliefs and what you want to try and what you're curious about, you'll start to see some trends, but also you'll also see some things maybe you need to, actually say that's not true. That isn't how I am. And I think
You
that's
know
a
what?
great place to start.
You know what I do sometimes too is I advise people to audit like a brag book. Like what are your accomplishments going back from graduated from high school, got into college, did
Mhm.
this, got this grant. And then when you start listing everything you've done, especially maybe then you go to from where work, got promoted at this, was the youngest this, and you start looking back at because we forget our accomplishments. We forget
Right.
all the amazing things that we had to do to get where we are today. Because if you would look at someone from the outside, because if I objectively looked at you from the outside, I'd be like, wow, you're doing such amazing things. The fact that you built bold, that you have a book coming. I mean, I'm impressed. But for you, it's because you've been just kind of chipping away at it. It doesn't seem like a big deal. But when you actually write down and you start listing your accomplishments, you're like, I've accomplished a lot, right? But we
Yeah.
don't acknowledge it. We don't stop and pause and say, oh, good job, Leon. You did an amazing job, right?
Yeah, I think that's where I put that in ownership in the sense of owning your wins and owning the things that have worked and worked out. And you can do the same activity, like once you do the beliefs, go into ownership, and for the next 10 minutes, just write your wins, things that come to mind. We did this also at the mastermind. And what was interesting is like my book wasn't first. I almost forgot about my book, honestly. I didn't forget about it, but it wasn't like I thought it was a big deal. And I think that's also interesting. When you're being bold, there are things you absolutely have to do on your own. There are steps you need to take, and you have to have the intention, the discipline, and the motivation and the habits to support it. You do it. But a myth about being bold is that it's always a solo act. And that's what I love about community land, your community, the community I've created, is it's nice to have people check you, right? And so some of my inner circle, my inner circle, I'll say I don't really think that's a big deal. And they'll say, like, not everybody does that. Not everybody can accomplish that. You're acting like it's a no big deal thing, but it actually is incredible. Like you should be celebrating this and you should give yourself some space to do that. And for a long time, like I never did that. I never really thought about celebrating the wins. So every Friday, we just do our wins for the week as a team. And it's just incredible to see, wow, like that really is good. That is an accomplishment. And we brush over those and don't celebrate them. So I love that you brought that up, Lamb, because I do think it's another way for you to enforce your beliefs about yourself, about what you can accomplish just by taking those steps forward. We're not talking about rocket science. But I think what we're doing is talking about things that we don't take time or take intention to actually do or to look into. Like, why is that coming up for me? What is that belief? Mine was and still is, and I'm still a work in progress, is that I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not working hard enough. And that didn't come from like my parents pushing me or saying, do this, do that. I think a little bit from my mom in the sense of she never got a college degree. So the school thing for her was very, very important. That's probably the only one where I had that influence. But the other places where I feel I'm not enough, and I really just figured this out this year, is I lost my brother when I was 6 and he was 11, and it was an accident. And so seeing my parents and my family go through that, what I realized is that up until even now, I do it. I try to fill the gap. Wherever there's a gap, and certainly when I was younger, it's like, let me do everything to make sure everyone's happy. Let me make sure to do everything that my parents never have to be upset or sad again. Let me fill the gap. Let me be enough to fill the hole of the space. And so for me, it was just, I figured that out at 52. But it was like good because now I can understand where this I'm not enough comes from, because sometimes being bold is actually doing less. And I had to say that again. It's doing less, not adding one more thing to your plate, not becoming something else, not doing one more thing, not getting one more degree, it's doing less. And what that less is, meaning you're letting go of things or not doing things that are taking energy away from you, or are not adding value back to your life or your community, or how you can, live your best life full of possibilities. That's another thing that's easy to do right now, is just a plus and minus on a piece of paper. What's giving me energy goes under the plus. What's taking energy goes under the negative. So the giving and taking. So if things are, or people or places or jobs are taking, how can you buffer that a little bit or not spend so much time doing it? Example, I had a client who was coming into work early, sitting at her desk. She worked, from home. I'm at my desk every day at 7. I was like, why? Because I want people to know that I'm at work. I was like, is anybody else there? No.
First to work and last to work. That was me for 20
Yeah.
years.
And it was like, no, why?
No one recognized it because I was the only one at the office.
Yeah, you don't get gold card for that, right? Yeah. So I said, just put a piece of blue painter's tape across your office. Because she's like, can you shut your door to your office so you just don't go in there? She's like, no, my dog goes in there. I was like, just do, a painter tape across the top. It is just a reminder to you, don't go in there yet. Don't go in there until 7:30 or, whatever you're supposed to. And then she said she never even had to put the tape up because she just visualized it. And then because I just said candidly and really, carefully wanting her to see it, was no one cares that you're at your desk at 7. So why are you doing that? It isn't something that's adding value. It's actually taking
A lot of
yeah.
a lot of times the pain and the suffering is self-imposed and we don't realize it. Because,
Sure.
that first to work, last
Well,
to
it's a belief,
last.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's that belief I have to hustle. And I was just talking to a girlfriend about this, and I was like, part of it is capitalism. Okay, part of it is the people pleaser in a lot of us, especially a lot of women, the need to fill in the spaces and to help everyone and be something to everyone. But I think the second thing is really how capitalism is structured, which is your worth is based on your output, what you create, or what you consume. Because think about it, capitalism calls people aren't people, they're consumers. So your worth is based on what you buy and the things you accumulate, right?
Mhm.
So we have to work hard, work 9 to 5 so that we can buy things to have worth, right? And the problem with that is that it's never going to be enough, right? And also the way capitalism works is that you have to feel bad about yourself to buy things.
Mhm.
If we were super happy, that's the reason why we buy like pantyhose and Spanx and all these things. If we didn't care about these things, if we didn't have our insecurity, we wouldn't buy half of the things we buy, right? But then that whole notion of how work is also kind of structured is about production, production, production. And that sometimes is counterintuitive to us just being and being happy because we can't be consumers all the time, just as we can't be producers all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
living
Well,
a good life is opposite to that in some ways.
yeah. I think connected to our beliefs is what we consume. So it could be, like you said, like kind of doing the comparison, I need to have this, or I need to look like this, or I need to do this or have this title. Those are things that I think information we consume, or maybe, like I said, has been ascribed to us that that's what success looks like. But I think also what we consume, like in our social media, or who we're around or spending time with, or what we're reading, those are really, really important things for us to think about, because those absolutely connect to our beliefs, the beliefs about ourselves, beliefs of how we see what's possible or not possible, or how we view even the filter, our filter for the world. So I think that's really, really important word too, just to bring into this, because it absolutely connects with kind of our belief opportunity that we have.
Yeah, I want to open it up to questions because I know we're almost out of time right now. We might have time for one or two questions. Does
Sure.
anyone want to ask their question in the comments, or does anyone want to unmute and ask their question in the live Zoom audience? I'll also take a look in the live streams. Hold on, got multiples. Anyone in the live Zoom audience want to ask a question? No, hold on. I'm looking at the live stream as well. Okay, so there's one question on the live stream. How do you deal with fear of failure
Mm.
in living a
I
bold life?
Yeah, I think for me, what I realized is that fear and freedom really are partners in my journey. So when I obviously left my job and gave my notice, it was not popular at where I worked. And, people were like, wow, I can't believe you're leaving. How could you do this? And people didn't understand me either. So when you're being bold, just realize that everyone's not going to maybe understand the moves that you're making. But that's where ownership and learning and, keep moving is really, really important. But I think fear and failure, I think fear is meant to keep you safe. Like, it's a normal human emotion to have. But I think what you need to do is understand, where is that fear coming from? Is that fear coming from, I don't want to fail? And why not? Like, what if you succeed? So I think we're always thinking about what could go wrong versus what could go right. And when you have a bold mindset and you're walking through this world, which there's always things that don't work out, but are we thinking about the cost of not trying? Are we thinking about the cost of not taking that action, not learning more, not speaking to that person? One of my friends, I just love this statement, and she said, "You don't get what you don't ask for." So if you're not asking it of yourself to make some moves and to do some things that kind of step out of that comfort zone, which the comfort zone, you define it, but most likely, if you're doing something bold, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to involve change, and it most likely is going to make you feel uneasy at some moment because you're not sure of the outcome. It might not work. And I think what you also have to think, it might work. And I think that's what was so interesting about my journey, and everyone's journey is different. And every first step, second step is individual and personal to you. But I guess I would ask someone who's thinking about, what if I fail, or how did I address that, is I just knew I would fail at some point, but I knew that I would figure it out. Whatever it was, I was going to figure it out. And even in my own world now, like, everything's not rainbows and butterflies every day. Ask any entrepreneur. I think, but for me, my highs are much higher in a sense of accomplishment and feeling of ownership and agency of how I live my life in the most aligned way that I can. And it can get out of alignment. You have to pay attention to it. You have to notice it. But I think what's very, very different for me is the lows and the things that don't go right, or the bumps I hit, or the failures and the things that just didn't work out. I learn from them, just like I learned from them before, but probably in a deeper level, and they last a shorter time for me. And so for me, that's one of the things that I think, as I think about fear and failure, is they're going to most likely be connected in some form or fashion. But I think I've looked at fear and freedom being more of the couple that I'm kind of working with. And fear doesn't just go away. I think I just learn how to talk to it, how to compartmentalize it, and sometimes just to tell it to take a hike.
Yeah, I still love that. What about the Japanese proverb, "Get up 7 times." Wait, fall 7 times, get up 8 times,
Right.
right? Like,
Exactly. Exactly.
how many times you fall, it's that you get back up.
Yeah.
So for those attending this session today, Leigh, who are ready to make a bold move in their careers or their personal life, what's the one action that they can take right now, immediately, to begin their transformation?
Yeah. So I think it's the first step. And you have to define that first step based on, what's got to give, what are you curious about, where you feel out of alignment. And the first step may be just sitting down and doing that belief audit, or doing your win list. And I think either one of those will help you define what your next step is, because it's either going to be learning about something or getting curious or reaching out or connecting, or it's going to be really getting into a space of starting to understand and unlock your mindset and your beliefs, which are going to move you forward into that next zone of owning, your future, owning the possibilities.
I love that. And I'm gonna leave just kind of like a little comment for everyone who's kind of watching right now. I want you to pause for a second and really think about a time when you wanted to do something really big, really bold, really audacious. Maybe it was applying for that dream job, starting a new project, whatever it is, right? But you hesitated. Maybe you felt like you weren't ready or whatnot, right? Here's the hard truth: there is never going to be a perfect time. You're never going to be ready. And the only way you're really going to build the life you want is by deciding at this moment that you're done playing small and that you're ready to live big. Leigh, can you tell us where we can find your book, how we can support?
The easiest place to find everything, that we're doing and connected to and the things that we do in the community is at my website. So www.leighburgess.com. And I think from the book perspective, like Lance said at the beginning, pre-order that book. You get almost $1,800 of extras just by doing that. And you get some exclusive connections to me and the community through that pre-order. So really, those are great
Yeah.
spaces. The website, follow me on Instagram. I just started on Instagram. So in April, and then LinkedIn, definitely reach out, connect with me. That is where I have a bigger following, almost 20,000 there. And so just continuing to grow my community and create real community and connection.
And I'm also noticing that Francine Parham is on the call as well. She's also an author and she also has a book community. So if you're an
Oh, nice.
aspiring author or if you want advice on terms of how to write, a book proposal, reach out to Francine. You can find her website as well. She also does a conference for authors and I think female authors as well. Thank you so much, Leigh. Thank you for everyone who's joining.